coming from Africa to Libya. Because if you have heard, it was officially declared by Kenyan government that there are some mercenaries being flown to, Kenyan mercenaries flown to Libya and other parts of Africa. Meanwhile, I presume that the Libyan pilots will not bomb by all means the Libyan citizens. And I think, and I am quite sure of my sources, that there are some foreign pilots using our airplanes and fighting with the fighters over Libya. This is one thing. Now, it will, what happened at the end, it will weaken him up no more, but we know the stronger. We need the help to Tripoli. We need the help to Benghazi to survive and try to help them, because they need medicine, they need food, they need everything. And the only borders they can get through is now the Egyptian border, because all that area, the eastern area, is controlled by the People's Revolutionary People. And this is why I suggest that all helps and all aids, medicine and food, this has to, and especially milk for the children, this has to go through the Egyptian border, and I hope that the Egyptian government will understand that and let it go through.
Okay, passionate appeal there, gentlemen. We have, unfortunately, run out of time. Thank you very much to our guests, Nouri Al-Mismari, Mahmoud Al-Shamam and John Hamilton. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments, your suggestions or your questions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye.
It is in the details, a look, a connection, the moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
East Timor's government has declared it's time for foreign forces to leave the country. But with a frail infrastructure, is this nation prepared to face a future without international support? 101 East, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Homes have crumbled and many buildings have been left just empty shells.
Tensions are high. Riot police trying to control thousands of Greek protesters on the streets of Athens.
A British court has approved the go-ahead for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to be extradited.
Gaddafi is waging a war against the Libyan people. They are killing civilians mercilessly. They're using ammunition, live ammunition.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come
in a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
From local traders to international finance, it's commerce that makes the world go round. For global companies and developing markets, communication is the currency, and information is the most valuable commodity. Counting the cost at this time on Al Jazeera.
Personal blogs by professional journalists. blogs.aljazeera.net.
When atrocities are committed against innocents, the international community must speak with one voice. And today, it has.
Taking action. The United Nations Security Council slaps sanctions on Libya's government. Hello and welcome to Al Jazeera Live from Doha. I'm Taimur Nabili. It has become the world against Gaddafi, with the UN Security Council voting unanimously to impose sanctions on him and his family, and even his own man at the UN has turned on him.
The Tripoli regime has no longer any credibility. It goes without saying that this resolution represents moral support for our people who are resisting.
In Benghazi, they're welcoming the UN decision but feel more action is required. But ultimately, they believe that the liberation of the entire country lies in their own hands.
And another city falls. We'll hear from one of the residents of Libya's third largest city, Misrata. The world is watching, and it's time to stop the violence. That's the message from the United Nations, which has just announced it's taking joint action to stop what's going on in Libya. The UN Security Council voted unanimously for sanctions against Muammar Gaddafi and the people closer to him. In Libya itself, Gaddafi is continuing to lose his grip on power, even in his stronghold of Tripoli, where his police have now abandoned parts of the capital. Reports coming out of Libya's third largest city, Misrata, also suggest that that is now in the hands of opposition supporters, and they're negotiating with soldiers to switch sides. So the UN is saying that it has agreed sanctions that it thinks will have a real impact on Gaddafi and will help the people of Libya. But is this more talk, or will the resolution actually do anything worthwhile? Here's the US and Libyan ambassadors.
Well, we have, as a Security Council today, imposed tough and binding measures to prevent the flow of arms in and out of Libya, to freeze the assets of the leadership who are committing these atrocities, to prevent the travel of those same people and those that are supporting them. These are all very specific and concrete measures designed to end the violence and enable the people of Libya, as I said, in the Security Council to continue to be able to express themselves freely and now without violence.
We expect the regime to think about this resolution which has been passed today. We also expect those who are collaborating with the regime to take a position and side by the Libyan people. These are preliminary measures. I hope that these measures will help ending the tragedy which our people are facing right now.
Well, let's run you through some of the specific elements of what the UN Security Council resolution outlined. It's demanding an end to the violence, which the UN says has claimed more than 1,000 lives, and it's demanding that the Libyan regime take steps to recognize what it says are the people's legitimate demands. It also wants an investigation into the bloodshed and for the attacks on civilians to be referred to the International Criminal Court, and it wants an end to all arms sales to Libya.
I commend the Security Council for its decisive action today. In the days ahead, we will look for similarly decisive steps from the UN General Assembly and the international community as a whole. Today's measures are tough. In the coming days, if needed, even bolder action may become necessary.
Live to Benghazi and our correspondent Tony Bertley. Tony, Benghazi really in many ways the heart of this entire revolution and one of the first cities to declare itself free of Gaddafi. What's the reaction there to the UN situation?
Well, they're welcoming that decision. Any decision that puts the squeeze on Gaddafi is certainly something that they're in favour of. They'd like to go a little bit further. A lot of people were telling me that they would like to make sure there's an air exclusion zone so that Gaddafi, with whatever remaining helicopters and planes he has at his disposal, doesn't turn those on the people in a last ditch to retain power. So there's that concern that the threat from the air is pretty much there. And also the threat on the ground is also quite... But they realise that ultimately, at the end of the day, that they're going to be responsible for the liberation of their entire country, and they're actually taking steps to do that.
Well, one of the steps they seem to have taken is to start talking about interim governments and start suggesting that perhaps they will be in a position to provide leadership in the future. Where is that particular situation at? I mean, have they given more detail on what they're proposing?
Well, there was a big meeting of the former Justice Minister who's leading this process, and a lot of the tribal elders, they're coming together. And I think, if anything, signals the downfall of Gaddafi is the fact that these tribes have come together and they're showing the unity and the solidarity now. So where it goes from there, I don't know. There was a few concerns mentioned to me on the street that some of these people who are forming part of this interim government are really the old Gaddafi regime. So there was a bit of dissatisfaction about that, but this is detail at the moment. There is a consensus to move forward, but also not just politically, but militarily, that we've seen that a lot of people are coming now from all over eastern Libya to sign up for the revolutionary force, to press ahead for the liberation of the entire country. So it's working a two-pronged attack, if you like, politically and also militarily.
Tony, this time yesterday we were talking to another correspondent in Benghazi, and the transition between a state of fear to a state of almost celebration was still ongoing. I mean, where would you put Benghazi now in that timeline? I mean, is there still concern on the streets that not only some of the powerful people remain in place, but also maybe that there are some some reactionary elements remaining that might still cause trouble for those protesters?
I think they're still in a state of euphoria. That is starting to calm down a little bit as hour by hour. But there is a concern that, Gaddafi he's not gone. He's not finished yet. Down the road, if you like, and it's 4 hours down the road, but there's considerable Gaddafi forces, and they're very well armed. So they could take 3 hours to get here. There's not a considerable amount of defence here. So there's still a possibility, a note of apprehension in the proceedings here that possibly there's one last sting in the tail. But generally now they believe we're there, we are free, we're moving ahead, and now let's get the business of day-to-day life back on the road, and that's what they're looking at now, getting people back to work, getting the food chain working, getting everything, all the public services working. So it's a city that's now trying to get back in business.
Tony Birdie, live in Benghazi. Thanks, Tony. Now, a short while ago, my colleague Sami Zaidan spoke to one resident of Libya's third largest city about who's in control there. After clashes and a standoff with an army unit were reported, Khalid in Misrata says the security forces have now been driven out of the city.
The demonstrators now are in control, complete control of the city. There is no existence of any interference from the government, since all the government apparatus have been withdrawn to outside Misrata.
Right, we've heard at the same time that there have been clashes ongoing between some military units around the city and between protesters. What's going on that front?